So I'm going to go ahead and begin. This is the final presentation for IDT 201. My name is Jacqueline Ruiz, and for this um, project, I wanted to focus on an issue that has been an ongoing issue at my school as a special education teacher who teaches a lot of nonverbal students who are on the spectrum with pretty extensive support needs. So I wanted to focus this training on behavior support and de-escalation. Um, so let's start with the problem. So the problems that we are seeing across the board at my school, at my district, and what I've seen online from other special education teachers, whether they're mild teachers or moderate teachers, this is a problem that has been ongoing. So one of the first ones being that staff, meaning like support staff or paraprofessionals, or some people know them as teacher assistants, um, they often lack consistent training in managing challenging behaviors. And then on top of that, some of the teachers also lack training in certain behaviors, including general education teachers. Our responses tend to be a little bit more reactive, and which in turn increases stress and reduces instructional time because we obviously have to address the situation. We can't just ignore, the fire that's going on in the back of the classroom. And in I kind of added a little bit of like a blurb in my paper about how just at my school in the last 2 years, um, in we have four self-contained, we're called self-contained, so these are moderate severe teacher placements. Some incidents in the last 2 years included a concussion where one of the teachers, she actually had a student that would elope a lot. So the student would run away and run away from the classroom. And she went to go follow the student and she tripped and hit her head on a brick wall when then she got a concussion. Two paraprofessionals at the beginning of this year, in the last few months, they both had pretty bad back injuries. One of them has been out on a workers' compensation for like the last 2.5 months, and we don't know when she's coming back. Another one just returned, and he's been out since the first month. And then on top of that, a lot of physical aggression, kicking, biting, spitting, a lot of these things. So a lot of us are pretty bruised up and stuff. But as it is part of our job, and these are some of the things that we have to deal with regardless. But I think um, it is still something that is important to address so that we prevent these behaviors from increasing. So right now, the current state is frequent calls to behavior support. So luckily, my school, as opposed to other schools, actually has embedded behavior support. So I have two classroom paraprofessionals that help my students that are like level one, tier one, I guess you could call them, and they don't technically have behavior training. But then I have one staff member who specifically is embedded into my classroom to support all my students with behavior needs. So on top of that, we have a site behavior analyst who does behavior service minutes intervention for the entire school, and that could be in general education or in special education. But because of that, and because of our classrooms and our behaviors, we usually have a walkie-talkie that we use in case of emergencies, or we need to call admin, or we need to call the behavior analyst. So our current state, I would say, is that we have frequent calls to behavior support. And also staff feel unprepared or unsure how to respond safely, and also the heavy reliance on administrators and behaviors. The desired state that we would like would be a confident use of proactive strategies and trauma-informed practices, and fewer crises and safer de-escalation and increased staff independence. So I think the goal overall would be just having everyone feel properly equipped to deal with certain things, um, to just prevent injuries, to make it easier on everyone really, because it is a pretty big deal when something does happen and a lot of people need to get involved. It involves a lot of moving pieces. Okay, so for the audience for this one is paraprofessionals, special education, and general education teachers, behavior staff, administrators, wide range of experience, comfort levels. So basically, almost everybody is pretty involved. I would say paraprofessionals and special education teachers, as well as general education teachers, just because the general education teachers usually look to us when we have behaviors of like how to support them, how do we, um, what can we do? You know, do they need to change placement, things like that. So this is definitely the audience. So for the overall instructional goal, it would be to reduce reinforcement or need for backup um, by 30% over the next academic semester. And then for the learning objectives, I just have them here listed. So demonstrating de-escalation strategies with 90% fidelity, identify appropriate verbal responses by 80% accuracy, and writing step-by-step responses scoring 4 out of 5 on a rubric. For the instructional approach, I think a blended approach would probably be the most appropriate. So anything from like an interactive lecture, involving case studies that have to do with inclusion, hands-on demonstrations, because like most people, we are pretty hands-on learners. I know I am. So also even like including some type of role play, where special ed teachers can work hand in hand with each other to kind of demonstrate to the general education teachers, for example, just because we have a little bit more experience. And then also same thing with reflection and discussion. I feel like having a more blended approach would be more appropriate for this situation, just because this is something I guess it's like pretty complex. So just seeing it in person would probably be the best approach. As for the training content, there's a lot of ways one can go about this. So behavior foundations, functions of behavior, like why is the behavior happening? Are they trying to escape? Are they trying to attain something? What is it? Proactive strategies, so trying to be proactive, get to it before it happens, verbal and nonverbal de-escalation, crisis prevention and recovery, documentation and follow-up, as well as practice scenarios. As for the assessment plan, um, what I think would be best would probably be like a written scenario response. So just kind of going through a scenario and what, um, just to write initially like what your thoughts are on the scenario, what you identify, what would you do and why. Also having a mock classroom demonstration, verbal response identification quiz, just to kind of make sure that we check for understanding. For the implementation plan, so like I mentioned earlier, this will be best delivered in person. So having like a whole day of professional development, or even just like a workshop series where you kind of break things down into chunks, which would also be really useful. Um, and then for some of the materials, it would be like a projector for the presentation, having space in a mock classroom, having a checklist, and then having case studies available. Budget considerations. So BCBA, which is a board certified behavior analyst, that would be kind of like our SME. So making sure that we use them and their strategies to kind of help develop all of this. So they would probably be running most of these workshops, along with some of the special education teachers, making sure that we have substitute coverage for the teachers, both general education and special education, making sure that we have the printed materials, and if there's any like behavior toolkits, like assessments or curriculum needed, then that should also be considered. As for evaluation, for level 1 in reaction, it would be satisfaction and a confidence survey. So what is the initial reaction? What do we think about this problem? Number two, the learning. So quizzes, scenario performance, all kind of tying into the workshops or the PD. And then for level three, behavior, real world application observed by administration or BSAs, which is behavior support. And then for level four is the results. So do we actually see a reduction in walkie calls? Do we see fewer staff injuries? Do we see an increased time of instruction? So for the sample lesson, one of them, if we focus on verbal de-escalation, it can be like a mini lecture. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of us, especially as adults, kind of understand a little bit better with demonstration. So keeping the lecture a little bit short, but focusing more on demonstration, practicing. So having that hands-on experience with scripts and then coaching. So having feedback from other professionals and then having an exit ticket, which is just kind of like a thing that teachers do with their classes, usually when they're done with a specific topic and they want to make sure that the students understand, they'll create an exit ticket so that they know whether or not they understood the concept. And then finally, the conclusion. This training strengthens safety, staff confidence, and student outcomes, while also creating a culture of proactive support and consistent responses. All right, so that would be it for my final presentation. Um, thank you so much for watching. I don't know if the professor's watching or if the rest of the class. So thank you and have a good end of year.